So let's bring in Ken Cuccinelli, surrogate for Ted Cruz, president of the Senate Conservatives Fund and former Virginia Attorney General. Good to have you with us, Ken.
Morning, Chris.
So much to talk to you about. Let's start with this little bit of intrigue. Here's a quote from a report. Members of a secretive cabal of prominent conservatives known as the Group, in all caps, led by Tony Perkins and you, Ken Cuccinelli, held a conference call Tuesday to reevaluate their positions on Cruz. Are you rethinking your support, even though called a surrogate?
That report is 100% false. There's no way any movement conservative would ever rethink supporting Ted Cruz. He's the only conservative. Well, that's not true. Ben Carson is a conservative, but he's the only conservative with a track record left in the race. And that report you cite to is absolutely 100% false. No call took place. None of us are rethinking our support. There's no reason to. Ted Cruz has been a consistent conservative for a very long time, and unfortunately, with Justice Scalia's passing, his very unique qualifications to pick a justice for the Supreme Court, which every Republican president has gotten wrong in one way or another in my lifetime. Ted is better prepared for that than anyone else.
You know, all right, so let's put that to the side. So Ted Cruz calls Sri Srinivasan a friend. Now, if he were to get nominated by President Obama, Ted Cruz is saying he wouldn't even think about holding a hearing. How do you reconcile those two things? The guy's a friend, he respects him as a judge, he won't even hold a hearing.
Look, I think that at this period of time, first of all, no Supreme Court appointment would happen before the end of this term, so you're only talking about a few months of the next term. And when you're in the throes of a political election that's going to be a change election, Barack Obama's term limited out, he's not coming back, that it's appropriate to let the American people have a say in this process. I mean, that is part of the process. For the timing of this vacancy, that is the right position to take. Ted is in the right place on that.
Well, Ken, look, you were the Attorney General, so I'm not going to, not going to trade thoughts about the law with you. But the Constitution, that's about nominating somebody and advise and consent. It's not about delay. But the politics are clear, and it's been done in the past.
That's right. Well, it's not just the politics, but the Senate is making a constitutional choice in its role as the advisor and consenter to whatever Barack Obama may send over. That in an election year, the people ought to have a say in that. So you're literally be voting for not just a president, but also a choice for the Supreme Court. And that's an unusual form of accountability for those sorts of appointments where the American people would have a say. And Ted Cruz thinks the American people should have a say.
Ted Cruz is the originalist, as Scalia would coin the phrase in terms of looking at the Constitution. But it would be hard to argue that part of advise and consent is the discretion to neither advise nor consent to process involved in it. But again, this is largely a political question.
Well, I don't think it's entirely political.
That's the political play.
That's parsing it. You can say it's political. You can say they accept their advise and consent role to say no. That's their advice, and that is their lack of consent. So it's the only
so a couple other big headlines.
It's the only time in a year and a half that a Republican majority in the U.S. Senate has mattered to the Republican grassroots. So for the Senate to cave on this would really be a tremendous failure.
And again, that's the calculation that caving would be seen as weakness and that would not play well at the base, and that this take on the situation will help. So we'll leave that part of the discussion as that. Now we get to what's going on with the taxes and Romney coming out against Donald Trump, ostensibly saying, I think there's something hidden in his taxes. Ted Cruz says Romney is right to come out and
well, I think this is just a question of openness. Ted has already released, I think, 5 years of his taxes. And look, openness has been a big question with Hillary Clinton. She's not releasing speeches to Goldman Sachs or anybody else. And there's the email situation with Hillary Clinton. So the contrast is very bad. Our side needs to be very open. This was an issue in my governor's race as well. How much weight it carries, we'll see going forward. This is not something that the Cruz campaign initiated, but we have already taken the step, our candidate has, of being very open about his finances, even when there are mistakes.
It's a new age. It's a new age. You know, it's no longer just about the candidates. Very often they're in couples where the spouse is the earner, and certainly that's the case with your man, Ted Cruz. And because of what happened with the loans from the bank that his wife is attached to, do you think her taxes become relevant? Should she be part of the disclosure process, though obviously not a candidate?
Well, it's my understanding they filed jointly, so what Ted has released includes some of that information. And that was my allusion earlier to the full disclosure. We've had a discussion about that loan they took out on ordinary terms, paid back and disclosed in one form but not on another. And you know, we had to discuss that, and that was a mistake, and it had to be explained. It was acknowledged as such, and we'll see if Donald Trump is as forthcoming and as open with the American people.
Now, Ted Cruz is making the case he's the only person who can beat Trump. Where does the confidence come on that? He did well in Iowa. He's in a deadlock with Marco Rubio.
Well, we're the only team that has beaten him. And yes, things move from state to state, but you got to win states. You don't win a nomination without winning states. And I just came from Nevada.
But you haven't been. But Cruz hasn't been close since Iowa.
Well, okay, but in the firewall
since
here,
then.
Look, Super Tuesday is the day that Ted has invested most of his time in the last 8 months. If you think about state by state, this is where we expect to start regaining traction. We will win states on Tuesday. I don't think Marco Rubio is going to win any. I mean, he told George Stephanopoulos that his speculation on the first state he'd win is Florida. That's after making the case for winning Nevada, where he grew up and, frankly, had an awful lot of volunteers coming in from other states, but it didn't make a difference. You got to win states to win the nomination, and only Ted Cruz has done that other than Donald Trump.
And that also is why Tuesday looms so large, and that's why we call it Super Tuesday, not just the number of states, but their impact. Ken Cuccinelli, thank you very much, as always. You're always welcome on New Day to make the case, sir.